All right, guys, so in the last video, we talked about, or we stopped here on a cost center example. So what I thought we would do is work this problem together, and then we will move on to the next one, which is profitability or the profit center, okay? So hopefully you have this up on another screen. I'm gonna flip this screen so I can solve this problem on a blank sheet, okay? All right, so it says this Vincent company is under budget by $36,000. So overall, so we have the overall company here, and they're under budget by 36,000. So I'm gonna say under 36,000 under. Okay, overall. And then it says the company is divided into the north and the south region. So we're gonna call this part the north. Okay, north. South side, okay? The north and south regions. The north region is over budget by 45,000. So over budget and it's over, okay? All right, and so it's asking us what is the southern regions or the south regions determine the amount that they're over or under budget. Now, if the overall amount has to be an under budget of 36,000 and this one is 45,000, I don't know if you guys remember like absolute value or however you want to solve it, but what I know for sure is that this has to be under budget. This number, whatever it must be, it has to be under budget by a significant budget. This one has to be under budget by a significant amount if the overall total is under budget, because this is 45,000 over, but the overall total has to be under. So this one has to be I don't know if I'm doing this a good job explaining this, but you can imagine this is as like a 45,000 negative. And they're saying that this one is, the overall amount is 36,000 positive, right? So first off, you got to get to 0, and then you got to go an additional 36,000, right? So hopefully that makes sense, maybe somebody. But anyways, to get to 0, this is going to have to be at least 45,000, and then you need an additional 36,000, okay? So if I added those together, 45,000 plus the 36,000, then that means that the South had to be under budget by $81,000. Okay. So remember your like absolute value or the timeline or whatever math class that was, I can't even remember. But I hope this demonstration in this part makes sense to you. Okay. All right. All right, so moving along. We are now talking about profit centers. So profit centers is where managers have the responsibility and authority for making decisions that affect both revenues and costs. As I mentioned before, it is basically they're in charge of the income statement. So the profit center may be a division, a department, or a product, as we mentioned before. And then managers do not make decisions concerning any kind of investment, which means once they generate any kind of profit or revenue, profit for a business, that profit is then turned over to the larger organization for them to decide how to invest that money. So if they want to buy more machinery, if they want to invest into their employees, so forth and so on. But the particular division or region doesn't make that decision when it comes to investments. So when we're looking at profit centers, we're looking at controllable revenues and expenses. Now that's important because there's so from a revenue perspective, everything is controllable when it comes to revenue. Because you're selling it, right? So you have control over how much you sell and how much you don't sell, given if there's a customer base, so forth and so on, right? So revenue is completely controllable, but there are some expenses that are uncontrollable, right? And we'll dive into that in a second. But the controllable expenses that we want to focus on is like sales salaries and utility expenses. All of those are controllable expenses that can help shape or make or break a company, right? So then we want to next talk about direct operating expenses and indirect operating expenses. Now, some direct operating expenses, again, includes the sales salaries, the salespeople salaries, right? Or your utilities, your rent, right? Direct operating expenses are those things that are required to run the business. So if you're a manufacturing business, you need utilities, you need power and lighting, you need people, right? And you need materials. All of those are operating expenses that are necessary to conduct the business. Then there's indirect expenses that a business incurs, and we'll talk about that in a second. Actually, let's talk about it now. So those indirect expenses would be considered like research and development, legal, IT, payroll, transportation, HR. All of those are indirect expenses, but they're needed in some shape or form, and we'll talk about that in a second. So remember when we said that maybe in the very first video, that when you have a decentralized organization, right, this is the entire company, the general company, but then they have all of these different branches, right, all located all around the country, right? But in all of them, most times they're all going to have a sales team. I can guarantee you that. So if you ever want to go to sales, that's, where you want to make money, guarantee the job, sales is it. Okay, everybody needs a salesperson. All right, so once you get the sales, right, but then as I mentioned in the first video, then these salespeople need support staff, people like the accounting department to collect the money, right, and the HR to help pay people, so forth and so on. So then not only are you multiplying the sales team, now you have to multiply all of the support. So all of your support, right? So now from this company, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have 8 accounting departments doing the same thing. And you have 8 HR teams. You have 8 legal teams. You have 8 everywhere. All of your support teams are being multiplied, when that's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, that's redundant, right? You have maybe more staff than needed. So this is where you have service departments comes into play. Now we're going to take the same example and just consolidate it a little bit, right? So instead of having the support team for all of these different locations, what they're saying is now that you have your business, we're going to put the support team, we only going to have one support team. Okay. And that support team is going to be located in corporate. And then we're going to help support each of these different divisions. Instead of having 8, I'm now going to have only one support team. And that support team will service each of my divisions, right? So if you need me, I'll help you out. And so let's talk about that for a second. So all of our support teams, I mentioned a few of them, but a few other support teams, give me a second so I can have some space. So a few of the support teams that you can think of that we're no longer going to put in each of the locations, and we're going to only send to corporate. Corporate is going to hire them, is like research and development. You have IT, HR, accounting. What else you have? You have legal, and you have payroll and transportation. All of this is going to be done at corporate. They're going to employ everybody, and as each of these different divisions need it, they're going to get the support from corporate. And then when there's costs associated with it, right? So say for instance, there's a total of $20 million that was used up from R&D, IT, HR, then they're going to allocate it based on their usage. Everybody with me? Hopefully you're saying yeah. So at the end of the year, this $20 million will not be in corporate. It will be allocated or given out to each of these departments. So for instance, there's this 20 million, maybe they only use, I don't know, $1 million of it, right? And then for this one, because they're on the West Coast and the West Coast has all kind of HR issues, let's say they use about, I don't know, 5 million of it, right? So you're going to keep going around and allocating this $20 million until all of it is allocated toward all of these different regions based on their usage. All right, so hopefully you know what I'm talking about, or maybe you work at an organization of this type, and I've done it surely before. So let's talk about it more in the next slide. All right, so here's our example. So we're talking about allocating service department charges. So again, HR, IT, legal, what else? Payroll, transportation, HR, all of those, right? So we have this organization, and instead of having 10 different those departments, we only going to have one centrally located, and as you use them, you're going to get a portion of it. Okay, everybody's getting their dib of it. So with that, we're going to try to solve this problem. All right, so we have Nova Entertainment Group, also known as NEG, is a diversified entertainment company. They have two operating divisions, a theme park division and a movie production division. This sounds very, very similar to a company we may know of, right? So what company is that? Think about it. They're a diversified entertainment company, two operating divisions, the theme park and the movie production division. It sounds a lot like Disney, right? Walt Disney Company, right? So the theme parks, maybe we have some, there's a few in Paris. I mean, there's one in Paris, Tokyo, California, Florida, Japan, maybe? I'm losing it, right? So that's the theme parks. And then movie production, that's endless, right? And so their movie production, some of the latest, highest, greatest movies, we can probably name on and on and on, but they have their division as well. So anyways, moving on. NEG Service Department, NEG's or Walt Disney Service Department, and the expenses they incurred for the year is as follows, right? And so NEG utilizes ABC. What's ABC? Does anybody remember a chapter that we covered talking about ABC? Hopefully you said chapter 4. And chapter 4 was all about activity-based costing, right? So NEG utilizes activity-based costing to allocate service department charges to each division. Okay, so we have this theme park division. This is their revenues and operating expenses. And then we have the movie production division, right? And so the three departments that both the theme park division and the movie production division uses is the purchasing, payroll, accounting, and legal. So for a total of $905,000. And so as I mentioned in the previous slide, at the end of the period, this corporate center will no longer have this $905,000 at their cost center. What they're going to do is look at, okay, who gets a portion of this $905,000, right? And it's going to be based off how much they use the service. So we're going to go in the next slide. We're going to walk through how we're going to allocate this out. This $905,000, when it's all said and done, they will both be allocated to the appropriate divisions based on their usage, okay? So with that, I'm going to take a break and pick back up in the next video talking about how do we allocate this $905,000 to each of these divisions based on usage.